What are my bangs doing? Banging? No. Ugh. Hello and welcome to Fall Fiction Free For All, where I talk about various fall-themed media and do my makeup or craft or a costume or whatever I feel like doing at the same time. This week I will be discussing Boy Meets World, specifically the Halloween episodes, so if that's something that you're into, stick around and we'll have some fun with some 90s nostalgia makeup. If you're on my Instagram, you probably saw me shopping for these butterfly clips, which Target just so happened to have, so they're here to stay. So Boy Meets World actually only has 3 legitimate Halloween episodes, and they're all pretty early on in the series with the exception of one. There's one in the first season called Boys to Mensa that is essentially just Corey cheating on an IQ test, and it happens to be Halloween, and the only Halloween themed thing that happens is that Mr. Feeney says, "Don't you love Halloween? No one seems to be what you think they are," and that's kind of it. Also, the little sister is dressed as a zombie, and it's very funny because the mom wanted her to be something cute, and Eric Matthews came in clutch with a not cute costume. The second Halloween episode is Who's Afraid of Cory Wolf, in which Cory is bitten by what he thinks is a wolf that has escaped from the zoo, when in fact, it is a rabbit. So all he knows is that he's been bitten by an animal, and he begins to exhibit what he thinks are symptoms of lycanthropy. He starts to grow excess body hair, and he starts having weird urges, and it turns out it's just puberty. That's all it is. So the next Halloween episode happens when Jack starts dating a character played by Candace Cameron, who lives in the apartment building that they've just moved into, and it turns out that she's a witch and she wants to sacrifice him and his brother because their last name is Hunter, and the whole thing is that they need to sacrifice 2 hunters, and it's like, oh, isn't that convenient plot-wise? So those are the 3 actual Halloween episodes of Boy Meets World. However, there is one that really stands out above the rest, and that is an episode that actually didn't air on Halloween at all until it came back around for a rerun, which is how I saw it and was traumatized by it. It is called And Then There Was Sean. If I say that name, and you've never seen this episode, but a shiver runs down your spine, it's because it's an inherited fear almost at this point. It's like a fear of snakes, where some people who have never seen a snake are just inherently afraid of them. It's like that. Oh, also, I forgot to say, if I'm talking kind of funny, it's because I went to the dentist today, and my mouth hurts. So if you're noticing that my mouth is moving kind of strangely, or if I'm pronouncing words a little funny, it's because I got injected with Novocaine, and also bit the crap out of my tongue, so it doesn't feel good. Alright, so like I was saying, in the episode And Then There Was Sean, there is definitely a fair amount of death, and it was a little shocking to 7-year-old me, who was watching this rerun on the couch in her little Halloween costume, dressed as Sabrina the Teenage Witch with a pile of Halloween candy sat next to me. It was very shocking to see all of your favorite main characters just die. So when I rewatched this episode, I was pretty relieved to find that it was a lot more campy than I remembered it being. As a kid, I think I perceived it as being really gory and scary, and we'll get to why in a minute, but I was very relieved to find that it wasn't that way, and it's something that I would feel comfortable having my kids watch. It's just that I was a chicken, and I got really scared as a child. So, as you can guess by the butterfly clips, I'm going for kind of a late 90s, early 2000s look, based on the time in which I would have seen this episode, which was like 98, 99. So, I'm gonna go in with kind of a sparkly pinky purple color, and we're gonna go for a late 90s look. So I was somewhat grateful to find that I was not the only person that had been traumatized by this episode. In researching this video, I found that a lot of people had a sort of trauma surrounding this episode despite it not being actually that scary. When we were kids, it seemed like it was a lot more serious because suddenly our favorite characters were getting bumped off, and it was very unexpected, and as children, you're not able to process that as well. And granted, Boy Meets World's main audience... Whoa. Boy Meets World's main audience was, I'm guessing, probably about 12 to 17, and I was definitely not that old, and neither were many of my peers. But I remember just being terrified because so many of the main characters were murdered, and I thought, oh my god, that's it. That's the end of Cory and Topanga. We'll never see them again. Just kidding, they're the only ones in the episode that don't die. So the episode starts with Cory and Topanga having recently broken up, and Sean is really struggling with this, and the reason why gets revealed a little bit later in the episode. Feels like Sean does not have the most stable life. So Sean isn't handling this well, and a kid named Kenny then asks Topanga to borrow a pencil, and Sean kind of freaks out because, like, only Cory can borrow pencils from Topanga. They're together, right? Oops, no, they're not. No, they're not. Sean? It's just a pencil. It's fine. But because Sean starts causing a ruckus about this, Mr. Feeney gets upset, understandably so, because, oh my goodness, these children are out of line. So Feeney says that if he has one more crazy interruption in the class, then he's going to send all of them to detention. And wouldn't you know it, there is one more crazy interruption provided by a creepy janitor who comes in and sort of vaguely points at them. And then they cut to detention. Mr. Feeney gave them detention because the janitor came in and was creepy. Not sure about that one, George. Not sure on that. So they all get detention because of the creepy janitor, and Mr. Feeney has to leave the room for some reason. I don't remember why, but he leaves the room, and the kids shortly thereafter discover that there is a note on the blackboard that says no one gets out alive, and it appears to be written in blood. Uh-oh, spooky. So the kids start to freak out, and while they're kind of trying to reassure themselves that it's nothing, Sean starts to think, well, hang on now. I watch a lot of horror flicks, and this is not nothing. But they're like, well, it's probably just Mr. Feeney trying to teach us a lesson. Via prank. How else do you teach kids lessons? I will say, within the canon of the episode, it does make sense, because for reasons I will later reveal, none of it matters. So as the kids are working this out and trying to figure out what Mr. Feeney's up to, or who they think is Mr. Feeney, the lights go out, and when they come back on, they discover that Kenny has been stabbed through the head with a comically large pencil. Now, as a kid, I remember this being way more gory than it actually was. I remembered it as a normal-sized pencil shoved through his head with blood on his forehead and blood on the wall behind him. That is not how it went. So while Kenny is stabbed in the head with a pencil, the way I remember it was completely wrong, and instead of blood being on the wall behind him, it was a pencil mark. And the joke is that they'll always remember that he was that tall. It was a good joke. It's very tongue-in-cheek, and it was very funny, but as a kid, I was terrified because I just saw someone get murdered on television. Like, what's that TikTok audio? Listen, it's a good joke. It's a great joke even, but I'm gonna need you to stop anyway. This is looking less 90s and more just like my daily makeup in a different color, but it's fine. So they make a "you killed Kenny" joke, then they run into the hallway where they are then running around in a very Scooby-Doo-like fashion, and there is a masked person running around after them, who we can assume is the killer. It's very Scream-esque, which was pretty big at the time, and as they come back to the exact point where they started, presumably because Boy Meets World has limited sets, so they find Mr. Feeney, and Mr. Feeney is not moving, but his eyes are open, so they kind of pat Feeney on the back and they're like, "Oh man, you really got us good. What lesson were you trying to teach us?" And then when they pat him on the back, Mr. Feeney falls down dead, having been stabbed in the back with a pair of scissors. This also terrified Tiny me, because while I thought that Mr. Feeney was kind of a strict teacher, which he was, I didn't want him to die, and then he did. So after Feeney falls down dead, it's kind of open season. They don't know who's gonna die next, and they don't know who the killer is. So they keep running around the school trying to figure out who the killer might be, and they think, the creepy janitor. It has to be the creepy janitor, because of course it's the creepy janitor, right? So they run back into the classroom where they were having their detention session, and they close the door, and they can hear the creepy janitor's cart coming down the hallway. But with the door closed, they can't see him. So they jump out, and they find it's just the cart wheeling down the hallway by itself, like someone had pushed it down the hall. So they look inside the cart, and then they discover the creepy janitor who is dead. After they find the dead janitor, they think, well, it must be one of us who's the killer. And Eric Matthews, being the gallant young man that he is, elects to stay in the hallway because he's the oldest, and he will find the killer. So then Jennifer Love Hewitt shows up for no apparent reason. In reality, I know that it's because she had literally just starred in I Know What You Did Last Summer, but as a modern viewer, it seemed really random. But it wasn't. It was a reference to slasher flicks. So yeah, it worked. So after they decide that she's too hot to be the killer, they start hearing these creepy school announcements saying stuff like, "Welcome to Jefferson High, you're all gonna die, blah blah blah." Then they run into the world's smallest school library, where they attempt to split up and hide amongst the 2 or 3 bookshelves that are in there. Again, it's a comedy. I can't expect, perfect logic, so it's fine. So as the kids are hiding in the extremely barren library, the killer elects to kill Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, whose name is Jennifer Love Pfefferman. It's literally just her. The killer elects to kill her by toppling over a stack of books onto her. Again, very campy, very silly. And then he elects to kill Eric the exact same way, as he's sort of cradling her and the light fades from her eyes kind of thing. So that's when things start to get real, because then Jack jumps out onto the ledge because apparently that's a safe place, and Angela follows him. And the killer, after Angela tries to reason with Jack and get him to come back inside, the killer then shoves both of them off of the ledge, and they both die. This episode really didn't hold anything back. It was terrifying. After Angela and Jack are pushed out of the window, Corey, Topanga, and Sean are the only 3 left standing, and he corners them in the library. Now, they ask him why is he doing this, and he just links Corey and Topanga's hands like he needs them to be together. Finally, Sean gets up the gumption to unmask the killer, and it turns out to be Sean himself. What? No, it's not his twin, it's Sean. Then we hear Corey's voice calling Sean's name, and he wakes up in class. He'd fallen asleep. It was all a dream, which is for the best, I guess, but little tiny me was very upset by all of the death. I'm not even sure if I finished the episode the first time I tried to watch it. I think my mom turned it off because she was scared I was going to have nightmares, which I probably did. But yeah, long story short, this episode was terrifying. I don't know why they elected to make it so scary, and in fact, they probably didn't set out to make it very scary. In watching it as an adult, I've realized that it wasn't. Of course it wasn't, because it was freaking Boy Meets World. I am not the only one that was afraid of this episode. As I was researching it, I found that a ton of people felt the same way, that it was really, really scary for us as kids. While the character deaths were very comical in fashion, and as an adult I can recognize that, as a kid I had never seen death be presented in a funny manner before, so I think that's why I was so scared of it as a kid, and I think that's why my peers were very afraid of it as well. At least I know I wasn't just a chicken. I mean, I am a chicken, but it's nice to know that it wasn't all me. Honestly, I would wear this look now. Probably sans dark under eyes, but yeah. Okay, so now we're all 90'sed out. The only thing that it would probably really need is teased bangs, but I don't feel like doing that, so I'm not going to. Ultimately, it was really interesting to go back and watch this episode as an adult, not just because I wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't scary, but also because it was interesting to watch Sean have this kind of a breakdown over the fact that Corey and Topanga had broken up, and the fact that he's so invested in their relationship that he feels like the world is falling apart and that people will die unless they are together. It's weird, and he should go to therapy, but it's interesting. I know that the pastels aren't exactly fall, but the most 90s outfit I have is this choker and this tie-dye crop shirt, along with butterfly clips, so pastels it is. You can wear pastels in the fall. I don't care. Who cares? The 90s were a strange time both for television programming and for makeup and fashion. But let me know what you think down in the comments below, and go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by my birthday, which is October the 10th. So if you could help me out there, that would be so cool of you, and I really appreciate every single one of you. Happy fall, happy Mabon, and I will see you next week.